Hello, everyone. How you doing? And welcome back to Skye and Evan in the morning. And today, we're gonna be talking about a TV show I love and a TV show I hate at the same time. Whoa. We're gonna be talking
Indeed, because
about
it's been
Utopia.
remade very recently and not in a way that it's like, why even remake this? Like, what's the point?
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna talk about all that. And yeah, Evan, I introduced you to the original Utopia, and you enjoyed it quite a bit, didn't you?
I did. I'd never heard of it. I was completely in the black on this show. Only I thought the 2020 Utopia was the original. I didn't realize it was a remake of this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird to see Gillian Flynn attached to a project. And you're like, oh, she's remaking a TV show from 2013. It's a little odd. Um, but yeah, I really love the original Utopia. I found out about it because I think I was watching like a Ralph the Movie Maker video, and he said that Utopia was similar to Mr. Robot. I was like, okay, I want to watch
Ah,
that. And then I watched it, and I really, really liked it. So yeah, I mean, Utopia, original Utopia, was a big inspiration for Mr. Robot. I've talked to you about this before, and it,
yeah.
it is interesting to think about the entire like conspiracy thing and whatnot. Obviously, they go very different places, uh, but
Well, it's got a similar like idea too with like the group of people that are the underdogs and taking on the huge corporate like conspiracy theory that like everyone is involved in. So like that same vibe inside of Mr. Robot and the like clandestine meetings and all the secrecy. There's a definite Mr. Robot vibe throughout this entire show.
yeah, and yeah. So I really like the original, and obviously spoilers for both shows. Um, Not that we recommend you watch the new one,
And
but maybe you want to. But yeah, the original show is about this group of characters who end up getting involved in this huge conspiracy relating to basically wanting to sterilize the
any
entire human race so that they can keep the population number way lower so that resources don't run out on Earth.
we've talked about this a decent bit, but like I, I find this show really hard to describe in terms of like its premise
Uh-huh.
because Breaking Bad like has a really simple premise, like just cooking meth to get money for family. That at least is the initial
Mhm.
premise of that first episode for that, and like it's a pretty good encapsulation of what the show's all about. This one it's harder because so much of the story's, like, built on mystery and
Yeah.
intrigue until they reveal,
Well,
like,
yeah, you would
details about what's going on.
it's hard to like describe the show to someone who hasn't seen it and you're trying not to spoil it because so much of like what the show is about you only learn way later on in the season. Like if you only watch episode 1, how would you describe the show? It's like there's this conspiracy and a comic book is involved, but that's kind of it. We don't know much. And a character named Jessica Hyde. But yeah. And yeah, they've made a few changes in the new one as well, but um I think I've mentioned this many times before, and I'm gonna start with it because it happens on episode 1 already. But I really don't get why they made it so Jessica Hyde was a character in the comic book. Um,
No, that really weird decision. I It's not even in the top 10 worst decisions from the 2020 Utopia, but yeah, it's so strange because it's antithetical to what Philip wanted, like,
yeah,
it
yeah, he
it's
wanted to protect his daughter. It would have made no sense to do that, and it's so weird because like in the original, the tension they build throughout episode 1 is fucking amazing. Every time Arby going like, "Where is Jessica Hyde?" and you're like, "Who the fuck is Jessica Hyde?" and no character has ever heard of her, and everyone's super confused, right? And then we finally see her at the end, and at the end, she's like, "I'm Jessica Hyde." They're like, "Oh my god, shit's about to go down." In the new one, she's a character in the comic book. She's basically like the hero of the story in the comic, the dystopia comic is it's called in the new one. Um, and
Yeah.
so when
It
Arby's like, "Where is Jessica Hyde?" which again only happens in like episode 2, whatever. Um, you're like Wilson is like, what? She's on my wall. She's a comic character, she's not real. Like you lose so much of the intrigue about like where is Jessica Hyde from the new one, just from like that simple change. It's so stupid. I don't get why they changed that.
Yeah, a random question that essentially had no context, and that was what made for an interesting first episode where you keep guessing. It's
Hmm.
it's made stupid because for one, they don't ask the question as much in the new one. It's either they're using it like sparse to save it, or it's just not that important of a line in the remake. I think it's the latter.
I think it's kind of both because when they have RB ask Wilson when they're torturing him, where is Jessica Hyde? Because he asks 3 questions: where is Utopia? Where is the boy? Where is Jessica Hyde? And when he says where is Jessica Hyde, there's like a like in Marvel movies where there's like a pause for
Yeah,
applause. It feels that way in the new one.
there's so much of that in the 2020. It really is embarrassing. Like, we're gonna be using the term Americanization, like, throughout this
Yeah.
video more likely than not, but, like, just there's an MCUification of Utopia in the American version. Everything is so glossy and clean, both the story and, like, the look and feel of the show. It's just,
Hmm.
like, sanitized and safe.
Yeah, it's weird. They made the story as a whole just way less interesting with a lot of stuff. Um, and yeah, as well as that, like having just it's so funny because they never ask where is Jessica Hyde, where is Jessica Hyde, and Jessica doesn't like meet the group until the end of episode 2, I think 2 or 3, I think 2. um the original, she obviously shows up at Becky's door and is like, I'm Jessica Hyde, and then the episode ends. But they wanted to have that
Well,
that cool moment in the new one, and they didn't have anyone for her to talk to, so she just mentions it to a dying girl because she well, they're called Harvest in the new one, but the network that Rod had a overdose with heroin. Um, that and she's just like, why should I help you? And then she just looks around and says, I'm Jessica Hyde, and then walks out. So she doesn't even get the benefit of being helped like she asked to. She just wanted to say for the audience. It was embarrassing.
Well, as well as that, it's 6 episodes in the original and it's 8 in the new one, and
Yeah.
they're less efficient with their time. They
Yeah.
waste time and they bloat the runtime with, like, things that weren't in the original. Yet they also cut out so much. It's impressive. Like, they add a bunch of material that's not in the original show, but they also subtract stuff.
Yeah.
There's, like, a bunch missing that could have been interesting.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, that's like one of the biggest changes because in the original Conran Letts, the CEO of Corvat, he's a character, but he's not like a big character in the show. Like he's he has an active part in the story, but he's not like super involved. He's not, always, I guess, uh having like a front row ticket in the show. But in the new one, they changed his name. It's called Christie, and he's like it's such an important part of the show, and they made him like such a weird
So
like
many
cultist.
scenes.
It's so fucking weird.
He talks so weird. All the villains
Oh
in the
yeah,
new one
I mean,
talk weird with
yeah.
their
We made
whispering.
so much fun of that. The way they talk is always the whispering. We need to make sure that the vaccine is released.
I'm not kidding. Like, if you don't believe me and if you don't care about spoilers, like, the 2020 Utopia is awful, and this shit doesn't happen in the original. But, like, go to the finale and watch, like, the first 15 minutes. Like, John Cusack's acting, I don't know what he was doing. I don't know why he always talks like that, but he talks like that through the entire show. he's always whispering and like, what do you do to earn your place in this crowded world? It's like
Oh
we're
yeah.
trying to like save children and affect the world and everything around. And it's just like, oh, what?
Speak
It
up.
doesn't feel normal. Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Just
it's
I
really funny. And I mean, it's so weird, right? Because they give him such a big role, and in the original, he dies. He's killed by Jeff, the the health minister. Um, but in the new one, he doesn't die, and because there's not gonna be a season two. But I assume he would have played a big part in it because he had managed to recruit Wilson at the end of the show. But by giving him so much like screen time, we get so little of Milner, who's arguably like one of the most important characters in the show. Like in the
yeah.
original, she's a very active part in the story. In season one, even before we find out, big spoilers by the way, she's Mr. Rabbit. Like she's always involved. She's always using Ian and the group, but
And you look back on it differently when you either rewatch the show or think about it again. You're like,
yeah,
ah, that's why she was like such an active role and did things to prove her loyalties. It was because she is Mr. Robot, actually. So, or Mr.
Mr. Robot.
Rabbit. God damn it. That's not the first time I've made that mistake. Ugh.
Yeah, but well, yeah. I mean, in the original, she helps them burn the vaccine, right? Uh, because she says like the vaccine may well have worked, but it also could not have. It's what's more important is getting you, Jessica, because the your dad hid Janus inside you, so like all the entire season she's trying to get Jessica. So it is like you see her actions a lot differently. In the new one, she has like one scene where they meet her in an abandoned Toys R Us, um, where she exposits dialogue for 5 minutes, and then we see her again when they go to her place, and she says, "Oh yeah, this guy, he's bad, Christy," and then we only see her again at the end where she gets Jessica Hyde and is like, "Oh, welcome home." So we have so little of Milner. She's such an important part, and obviously in season two she becomes even more important because we know her role and her relationship with Philip. Which, by the way, Philip is also not that big of a deal in the new one. It's weird, even though the comic is such
I
a
don't.
bigger deal in the new one.
Well, they shoot themselves in the foot for season two so many times because Philip's barely in season one, barely mentioned instead of the 2020 Utopia. They kill Rod in the second episode or whatever. So it's just like they're I don't know what they were gonna do with season two, but I'm like, it couldn't have been all that similar to the original one, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's weird because Rod, especially because Rod is the version of the American version of Lee, because in the original he was called Lee. No one knows, but he changed his name to Rod. But Gillian Flynn, I guess. Um, but like, because in the original, like they shoot him in episode one. Wilson shoots him, and you're like, okay, he's dead, and then he shows up in season two, and it makes sense that he could have survived. I mean, it was a shot. He wasn't like on the head or the heart or something, and he does lose mobility in his left arm. Like it makes sense. There's consequences, and he's such an important character for both Wilson's arc in season two, because he represents like what the network did to him. Because he was his torturer, and just having killed his father and everything. But also for RB, who's like gone through an entire arc in season one, and in season two he's like trying to be a different person, a better person. And Lee kind of tries to drag him back into like working for the network, but they wouldn't have had any of that,
Yeah.
considering Rod in the new one is 100% dead. He was axed in the face, like his face was cut in half, but with an axe by Jessica Hyde. So
Yeah, it makes it so that Harvey can't be developed by him in season 1, obviously, because he's dead, but in season 2, he has an important role that, like, influences 2, like, other main characters, and
yeah,
then that's just gone with him dead, so it's like, what were they gonna do there? I'm like, "I don't know. I guess make up some other character, have them." It's just so much less interesting, so much less efficient instead of the new one.
yeah. I mean, the original, we always talked about how efficient that show was because it's pretty insane because it's only 6 episodes per season, but you get so much out of each episode. We've also mentioned that about Slow Horses, which is another British
Exactly.
show that's fairly short. Each season is 6 episodes too, but every time we're just like, man, a lot of stuff is happening. And we get to episode 3, I'm like, damn, we're already halfway through the season. Like, I feel like we just started, but it keeps moving fairly well, and it then never feels like it's uh moving too fast or wasting your time. But the new one, there's so much of like just wasting your time as well.
Yeah, wasted time is an understatement with the new show versus, like, just the face of efficiency that the original Utopia is.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many fucking. Remember the meeting where they decide to kill the children? Like that entire scene that just goes on, and she disagrees, and then we have her talking to Christy and later being like, "Oh yeah, we need to do this and that, blah 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 blah." It's like, dude, let's move on. Like, wasting so much time regurgitating the same information. It's fucking. Then he sniffs the baby and he's like, new baby smell. That was a
And then
scene.
the trial as well, the tests for the quote unquote
Oh yeah,
cure
I
that
mean that. I
I
guess we should get
that
into
is
that.
the
That is
word.
the worst part of the new show. They
Yeah,
changed, and
it's hilarious to say that, but, like, we're here and now, that's the worst thing they did. They add a plot point that is not in the original, like, I don't understand how Gillian Flynn wrote it, 'cause
it is so
it's
stupid.
so awful, yeah.
Yeah.
You
So
wanna set the stage?
yeah. So basically, in the original, the plan was, hey, we're gonna infect a small island with Russian flu. Right after we already managed to trick the health minister into buying the Russian flu vaccine, um, and then that'll cause a scare, and it'll we'll get the British people to take the vaccine that we already have, um, so that an
So, an
outbreak doesn't
outbreak
happen. And
so an outbreak on a small island that's
yeah,
super contained, and then you get that confirmed cases, and you're like, "Oh, crap." That creates a scare, creates demand for, like,
a vaccine that
the
they already
vaccine.
have. Yeah,
And then, yeah, you have one produced, sell market that, and then obviously the more nefarious stuff that comes out later, right? Like, that really is the bare bones villain plan, right?
yeah. It's fairly
That's
fairly simple. It's genuinely just like we're
so
gonna
simple,
we're
so
gonna infect
perfect.
a
Oh,
small
Doug
island,
Dale.
and everyone's gonna want our vaccine before a pandemic occurs, or an epidemic. I'm not sure which word would be accurate in this, but regardless, and then that'll be our trial. We're gonna start with the UK to see if it works, and if it does, we're gonna do it on the rest of the world. Fair enough. We're fairly simple plan. In the new one, for starters, Michael Dugdale plays an incredibly different role than he does in the original. In the original, he's a civil servant. He's like assistant to the health minister, basically. Um, in the new one, he's a scientist who discovered a virus in Peru, in bats in Peru, years ago. But the virus was like not that I don't know if it wasn't like contagious in America, like that contagious or like a big risk, and so they never
Well,
cared about him.
you know why you forgot that detail? Because, like, it was shouted at you. his wife and him was talking about it. They're like, "Oh my god!"
Oh yeah,
And they
that's
just
my
yell
virus.
everything.
Yes, you have the
Wow!
vaccine. Whoa. Yeah, so like he already had the vaccine for his virus, but he wasn't tested on humans. And so, the vaccine is owned by Christie's company, which is also called, was it called Christie Corp or whatever? I don't know, something Christie. Because in the original it's called Corvat. So yeah. Um, so they already own the vaccine, and Michael, uh, who's called Michael Stearns in the new one instead of Michael Dugdale, he wants to test the vaccine before just putting it out there because um it could be dangerous, like especially because they're going to give it to children, especially because children are the most affected by the virus at this point. um which I'm not sure why they target children. Like we talked about this
It's
new show focuses so much on children. It's so weird.
Yeah, they're just gonna give the virus to everybody. It's a virus. They call it Russian flu. It affects everybody. There's nothing special particularly about how it works instead of the original, but for some reason they are specifically infecting kids. And I'm like, "Why kids?
Yeah,
Why schools? Why?"
i
All
think
it
they
does
i think
is
they
create
mentioned.
something that the virus can be linked to.
Yeah.
If you find out that it was tested, which is what they do. They figure out about the schools and the trials done there, and it's like, "Well, that's sus with that vaccine. Hmm."
Yeah. And I think the point is that parents would be more um desperate for a vaccine if it's their children. I think that's why they targeted children. But I
I
think people would still
I
be
it
desperate for a vaccine if it also affected adults. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like, you'd probably get it right along with your kid, like, if that were the case,
Yeah.
and I
I mean in the original they even say like keep your most vulnerable at home, your children, the elderly and the most vulnerable, the immunocompromised. Like they say
like you
that in
do
the
in an
origin.
actual
Yeah,
pandemic.
exactly. So like I don't know why it needs to be a specific targeting, because like it's the same as like COVID, right? Like the elderly, the children, and the immunocompromised were the most affected, and so getting vaccines to them first was more important. It's how vaccines rolled out. It's the same thing that would have happened in this case. I don't know why they targeted children. It seems so like and adding such an unnecessary extra step, I guess, in the new one. But yeah, they target only children in schools around America, um, and the FDA thinks it's FDA. No, the CDC. Sorry, I get confused with the American fucking whatever.
There's a
Um,
couple of different ones that play
yeah.
in the shows.
The CDC gets they think it's being caused by Christie's meat that he sells, that he says is basically not like proper meat. It's some like industrialized meat.
That that interview in episode 1 is so fucking embarrassing too. It comes across as so blatantly evil. It's like that Prince Andrew interview. It's like
Yeah.
there's there's like sometimes when someone's in an interview and you're just like, "You are just guilty." Like guilt is dripping out of your pores and for some reason they act like he played it cool or
Well,
that like the reporter was
they
being
act
like
like well,
unreasonable.
they act like that was like that. It made sense the way they played it, but like it didn't help them at all, right?
No.
Like I don't
So why
understand the
take the
entire
interview?
fucking point.
Why accept the questions? Yeah.
Oh no! Now I remember. Now I remember. It's because it's such a convoluted plan. Like I explained the original plan in like 30 seconds, and now I remembered another part of this plan. So the plan was, hey, I'm gonna look like I'm incriminating myself by doing an interview where I don't admit that I could be causing this virus to be spread, or I could, or maybe I'm not. Who knows? So that the CDC investigates my company because and when they find out that I'm clean, when we want to roll out the vaccine, the FDA will be scared to come after me because they already embarrassed themselves when the CDC came after me. I remember that there's a specific line where they say that like they wouldn't want to challenge me
You're
after
right.
they
Yeah.
like because they're gonna look like fools. So
It's to try to make it look like it's to try to excuse it for the trial and the air quotes "cure" vaccine. Like, that's why the FDA or the CDC or whatever it is in the American Utopia just, like, stands there. They don't it's the FDA, right? Like, the FDA agents come in, they're like, "Hey, we need to test the vaccine," and then they're
yeah,
like,
we need to
"Save our
test.
kids, save," and then
Yeah.
they're just like,
Well, yeah, it's like the
it's
head of
fine."
the FDA, and everyone's like, "Save our kids, free the vaccine," and then it's
Yeah,
like a day
sure, buddy,
later.
in 6
A day
6
later,
weeks to 2 months, after lots of trial and
yeah, but
experimenting,
no, a
like
day
all
later it's
vaccines.
freed. Like, okay. See, the original makes so much more sense because they control this kind of stuff. You know, the health minister. They literally
Well,
have the health minister under their thumb.
yeah, it did not need to be public. For some reason, everything needs to go down well with, like, shareholders, and I compared it to, like, Succession, but I'm just like, "Why was it like this?" Because the villains' families were never a thing in the original series. That was never something that was, like, important or really brought up, and they add they changed they changed the company and the way that the vaccine is put together and the virus is distributed, and all of it is just like, why did they do it like this? It's so much worse and it makes so much less sense. Like,
Yeah.
they have to keep covering things up, and that's what Not Dugdale finds out. He just keeps realizing it's like,
Yeah,
oh my
it gets
god,
later on in the
the
season he
house isn't
realizes.
decorated, and
And it's
it
such bullshit as well, because like everything about the plan is stupid, but he only realizes like the that the house isn't furnished. And you're like, why didn't you the network or harvest as they're called in the new one just furnish the house? Like it's so weird. It's like the stupidest things that you'd expect, you know, this extremely high level conspiracy to be able to be handled fairly simply, but they don't. And they need to do everything. Like, they need to have a fake fucking house
yeah.
for this fake
And
family. And we'll get to Charlotte, because she's a character in the new one.
yeah, and a twin, that's what I was getting at, is
It's another
they have
part
a
of the plan.
twin
It's
that
that
they kill, that, like,
well, yeah, the part of the plan
to
is like we're gonna infect one of these children that we've bred as part of our cult to be sacrificed when we need it, when we're executing our plan. Um, she has a twin. Both of them were bred to be like sacrificed, and one of them ends up being sacrificed by. We're gonna infect her with this new virus. It's not the Russian flu in the new one, but whatever flu virus it is. Um, and Dugdale, or not Dugdale, as you call him, is gonna give her the vaccine, and she's gonna die, but we're gonna replace her with her twin, and her twin is gonna be fully healthy. And so,
it's a twin. It's just completely stupid. For one, they look different. There would be differences in, like, how they look when they put them in front of news cameras. For two, the documentation process, it's like, how do you're just gonna act like the same person because they look the same? Like, they're all the numbers when you, like, test their blood are gonna be different. Like, twins have different DNA,
well,
so it's
yeah,
like,
that's
how
what's
does
so funny because Dugdale tests her blood, right? He's like, no traces of virus whatsoever. You're like, what? No traces? I gave you the vaccine like a day
none?
ago. It makes
Yeah,
so
like,
no sense.
I'm pretty sure, like, the what to a degree, what would happen is there would be antibodies, like, there would be still be virus inside of your
Yeah.
body, but
Your
you
body
would
would
have,
still be
like,
fighting it. You just have the antivirus like working
yeah,
overtime.
exactly, no trace is weird.
It's
That's I
insane,
don't
and
think that's
Dugdale
how that
just buys
works.
it.
Yeah. He buys everything. He's an idiot in the new one because he just,
Yeah.
like, he doesn't catch on, which is so
Until way
hilarious
too
because Dugdale
late.
is so timid and, like, just desperate to escape, desperate to get out instead of the original. He's fully aware from the
Yeah.
very beginning, like, what he's up against, and
And he's always trying
makes
to
him
get a way out. It's just really
yes.
hard.
Yeah, like, what can he do? He's, like, being blackmailed at every angle because he's just that one cog in the machine they had to force to work.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's so cool in the original is that they have a a scene where it's like, oh, we need you to sign off on this because it needs to be a civil servant. It can't be the minister. It's like, is that what this has all been about? That's why you needed me. It's like this one specific thing that he needed to sign off on. And that's why they needed him. And it's so cool because like they fabricate the evidence with him. Like they have a prostitute who's not actually a prostitute. She works for the the network. She pretends to be a Russian prostitute who pretends to have gotten pregnant with his baby so they can blackmail him and everything. Like it's an entire plan that makes a lot of sense. In the new one, it's like he has a fake wife, like a sleeper cell wife, who's always like keeping him in check. And he
That fight, by the way, is a highlight of the show. It's so fucking funny. I like I I couldn't believe what I was watching. It's straight out of the MCU.
it happens a few times right? When we were watching it. It's like it's this Black Widow. Like when Jessica fights Arby and there's like the gun swapping was like straight out of Black Widow. It's hilarious. Uh but yeah, like he has this sleeper cell wife who's always like keeping him in check and trying to get him to do stuff for Harvest, always secretly, and he never catches on to it. And then by the end, she blackmails him by being like, "Hey, we planted some child porn on your computer," and it becomes kind of a non-factor because Jessica and the group gets to their place, and Alice kills her. So it's all like for nothing, and it's so annoying because in the original, his wife wasn't like she wasn't a huge part of the show, but she was an actual character and she was important for the show. Her relationship with Dugdale,
Yeah.
the fact that they wanted children is a huge thing as well. Like they used that against Dugdale, that they wanted children and that he got the Russian prostitute pregnant because she thinks like, oh, we're gonna adopt this kid from you. You know, it's your child and it needs a home. And by the end of season 1, they adopt Alice, and at the end of season 2, they adopt Grant as well. Like it's all important. It's all building like this relationship with a lot of these characters. But in the new one, there's none of that because she's not a character anymore. She's a sleeper cell when she dies. It's like such a waste.
Yeah, retrospectively, everything was a lie, and she's almost not a character at that point. It just, yeah, secret agent to get killed. That's what she is in the new one.
Yeah, and you lose so much of
And it's
Dugdale with that. Like he plays such a smaller role in season 2 after that, because like especially because his role in season 1 is like I'm gonna in the original is that I work as the assistant to the health minister. So like that is a huge deal. Like he holds a lot of power and he has a big role to fulfill, and he's important in season 2. He would have been important in season 3 as well, because like at the end of season 2, Wilson like, no, you're gonna continue working for us. But in the new one, he has no role anymore because he already created the vaccine. But they do something like, remember he steals one of the eggs from the factory, the vaccine factory, and for some reason he keeps it. Who knows where that would have gone?
yeah, I don't know what the plan was, what the point was.
Because it's so weird. Like, is he gonna continue? What would he do? Is like studying the virus, I guess. Like, because he thinks that they destroyed the virus and everything's fine now. So I don't know why he would have kept a piece for himself. But he does. It's weird. And I mean, it's just the entire scene in the warehouse as well is one of the stupidest things in the new show as well. We were talking about that when we were watching, because it's so funny. In the
It's
original, they're working
insane.
with Milner, so Milner has cleared the building, and they're just like, putting the entire stock on fire. They have some gasoline, they light it on fire, and that's it. In the new one, like,
It's like the same thing that they do in Breaking Bad when they destroy the lab. It's just like turn on the gas and just like, un break open crates of flammable. It's like, yeah, burn it all down. The new one, it's like actually smashing the vials individually. It's like
yeah,
fire.
they're running
Just
around with
adds
the
up, guys.
fucking
Fire.
um, fuck, I forgot the name. The machines that lift things. I forgot the fucking name.
Fork loaders? Or
Forklifts. Yeah, the forklifts. It's fucking hilarious, hilarious. They're just like driving around them, going over, breaking the vials. Obviously, they would have missed like you said, like 80% of them probably are broken, but it's
Well,
whatever.
they just knocked out all the shelves. There's this moment where, like, not Dugdale, like,
He hits one of
creates, like, a
the
dominoes, and it's like,
yeah, and
"Ah,"
everything
and then
falls
they
down
all
because the show was like, okay, this is never gonna end because there's way too many crates. So let's just pretend like he hit one and every shelf just fucking
that's the
fell.
thing, they didn't have it didn't have to be that way. They're the ones who decided to say that, like, they were already, like, putting them into manufacturing and they were gonna, like, deliver them in the morning. Like, it didn't have to be that way. It was just a box, and it was that way for a reason in the original series, but nothing happens for any reason instead of the new one, or at
Yeah.
least not any reason that adds up.
Yeah, and there's like absolutely no security in the new one as well, and it made sense in the original why there wasn't because of Milner, but in the the new one, it's just like, oh, there's like five people standing around outside. There's not like
It's so
a
funny.
master key
Their
whether they can
efforts
like
to
get in.
try, they cannot get in. It's like
Yeah, but
there's like
there's a fucking
5 or
back
6
door,
of them, but they're
remember?
just
That
doing,
they leave through the
"Ah."
back door? The group leaves through a back door after they open, like, the big garage door. It's like, there was always a back door, and the people that work here didn't know? It is so stupid. Everything about it is just so, so dumb.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's just, I don't get it. They make such a dumber version of the original, and, I mean, that's... Now we're gonna get into Charlotte, because I'm gonna talk about Arby. That's perfectly clear with Arby, who I think you said, like, when I asked you what your favorite character was, you said Arby and Ian were like your top two. Um, and Arby is one of the best characters in the original show. He's so interesting because he's like this killing machine, who feels nothing when he's killing, and he kind of learns how to feel. It's so interesting when he kills the kid in the original one with the raisins, because he just sees him drop the raisins, and he starts crying, and he wipes a tear from his eye, and he just looks at it confused, like, what is that? And he's just trying to understand those feelings. It's very, very powerful, very interesting. And then he finds out more about his past, about how his dad used to test stuff on him, and how that caused him, early trauma is what caused him to be the way he is, this emotionless killing machine. And because of that, he breaks out of it and starts helping Jessica, um, mostly by just like giving her Utopia, and he just stops working for the network. In the new one, he like the same beats kind of happen, but not really. It's weird. Like in the new one, he kills the kids. It's not like a school shooting anymore. He invades one of the, well, the protege. Christy calls her protege, his protege, which was never the impression I got, but whatever. Invades her house, kills everyone there. They're like having dinner, a bunch of kids, even a baby, and one of the kids was in the bathroom, and he drops, and he was eating raisins, and then he shoots him, and then he, instead of just like, it's a quiet moment where he wipes a tear and he's like confused, he just starts wailing, and it's, yeah,
"Ah!" It's
and
the
like I don't know if the actor is bad or not. I don't want to knock the actor because
I genuinely don't know. I don't know if it was the actor's fault or if it was the
the
direction.
director,
I think
because
it was probably a combination of
yeah,
both, but one way or another, he was
it's
given
so,
bad
it's
material.
so weird because RB acts so differently in the new one than he does from the original. He acts like, like the when you see a serial killer like archetype in like a 2000s TV show or movie, where it's just like he acts like autistically, I guess, and he's just like acts childish. But he ends up killing everyone. I think you compared him like to the T1000 even. And in the original he was kind
Yeah.
of that, but it was more interesting than that. He didn't understand why he
In
didn't feel
large part,
things.
because you had Lee
Yeah.
w that was there for a lot of that, and there's interesting things you can do, and it's the 2 of them.
Oh yeah, I mean that's also another thing because like I was mentioning to you when I was rewatching the original. There's a scene where Arby's talking to Connor and Letts, and he says, "Other than you, Lee was the person I knew most, and he died last week. Why doesn't that like bother me? And I was like, oh, that's so cool. In the new one, he's not affected at all by Rod dying. Like he's still smiling at everything and doing everything Chrissy tells him. Like it's so weird. Like nothing affects him, and the original things affected him, but he didn't understand their effect. That's what was so interesting about his character. There's none of that in the new one.
Yeah, regardless of whose fault it is in the new one, they don't get RB. The performance, it's just it does not have what his performance in the original had.
Yeah.
All the nuances are just gone, and yeah.
I mean, yeah, even one of the big things about him was his breathing problems that made him so like unsettling
Yes,
in episode 1. But
it's
in
like his
the
signature. It's like his Darth Vader, like, detail element.
yeah, the way he speaks like labored because of it is so interesting. But in the new one, like he uses his inhaler like twice in the entire show, and he's never out of breath. I think there's one scene where he was out of breath, and it's because he was running. It's not because of like him actually having his breathing problems that were so interesting. That were so like that characterized him in the original. It's just none of that is present. It's so weird. It's so weird that they changed him like that. And well, yeah, they changed his arc in the new one in slight ways, in very weird ways. And they basically, the way I see it is like they split his arc into like two characters, is between him and Charlotte. And Charlotte is the girl, the twin that survived from the trial that we mentioned earlier, right? And she like starts being obsessed with like living her life and figuring out a new purpose, because her purpose was to be a martyr, as she calls it. She was born and bred to be a martyr. um but she ended up not fulfilling that because her sister is the one that died for the cause, and so she needs to figure out a new role for her to play in the world. And because of that, she starts being like super obsessed with like creating these stories in the media, and her fake dad who actually cared about them for some reason. In the original there's like no caring about like these people dying, but in the new one it's like, oh, he's super affected by having to kill one of his daughters. He kills himself, and she makes up a story about him molesting her that she tells the press in front of the fucking house that was unfurnished. It's so convoluted and so stupid. And she's like a driving force behind getting Arby to like break out of his
Yeah, she's so important and affects all the other character. I don't know why they did it that way. I don't know why they changed it, because it feels like they made it up as they went along, and they just
well, it felt that way
none of it
because there was
adds
like
up.
so much. They were like, oh, we need to account for this and that and this and that with Charlotte and her storyline. It's like, why did you do it like this? The original was so much simpler. You didn't need to do it like this. It's so weird. It's so convoluted, and like she's such an important character in the new one. And every time she was on screen, she's like, oh my god, we're wasting more time on her being like, oh yeah, like I need to find a purpose. And like remember her fucking hanging like
And kissing the
kissing the
wall,
wall and hanging
literally.
like
What?
stuffed animals from the the
It's all
ceiling fan.
childish and just none of it's interesting. Nothing they do with her is interesting, or like makes for an
Yeah.
interesting character. She's confusing.
Yeah, and she's there to basically like be a driving force for Arby's arc. But like in the original, we didn't need that. Arby realized stuff on his own because he's like an adult in the original. But in the new one, he's basically a child, and she needs to tell him how to feel about breaking out of his like, training or his brainwashing or whatever. And be like, oh yeah, I want to find a new purpose because I realized my original purpose wasn't fulfilled. And he's like, yeah, that's curious, isn't it? Like he needs someone to tell him how to go about his arc. In the original, he just went through it because he's a character. In the new one, he's not. It's so frustrating. It's so
Yeah.
there's so much that I hate. Arby's like the biggest thing that I hate about the new one, because he's such an interesting character in the original, and him becoming basically like a child in the new one. Like even the way he talks to Christy, he's like such a child. In the original, he wasn't treated as a child. He was just treated as like a
No.
killing machine. But he was like, an adult.
He's super monotone too. It's like the way he speaks is very like one note. Like he speaks simplistically. It's like, "Where is Jessica Hyde?
Yeah.
Where is the boy?" It's like again, it comes from Christie. All the villains talk like that, and yeah,
Yeah, it's all it it's so frustrating because RB's so cool. Um, but I don't even the the original RB, right, was so interesting because he broke out of his um his training, basically his brainwashing, and they couldn't really stop him because they made him so efficient at killing that he was such a big threat. Um, but it's not like he was really like doing anything that would have harmed them. The plan still goes on, and so much so that in season 2 they try to recruit him back to work for them. In the new one, he kidnaps Christy and delivers him to the group, and he just who also just exposits his entire plan to them. Um, which in the original it kind of does happen. Conrad Letts does tell them everything, but it's because he's trying to survive. He's telling them what the purpose is because he thinks he's doing something, that's moral. Um, so much so that it works, and
because
Wilson is convinced.
he's a villain who genuinely believes in what they do because he comes across like a person. It's just it's the difference between the villains in the new
Well,
one
it's so
versus
weird
the old
because the new
one.
one, he is so much more of a character, so much more of a presence in the show, but he is so much less human, as you said. Like in the original, he felt like a real person who could exist, but in the new one, he's so cartoonishly evil. Like he says about killing children and everything. It's just like, oh, and the way he speaks, I did everything for children. I want to save the world. It's so it's so funny and it's so over the top evil in the new one. In the original, it's not, especially because in the original they're not targeting specifically children, so it doesn't seem as cartoonishly evil.
Pretty simple thing to remedy, you'd think.
Yeah. Well, because that's the
Golly.
thing, right? Because for Wilson to turn, you kind of need to make sure their perspective is like understandable. But the entire plan and everything around it in the new one is so stupid that it's like I don't believe Wilson would have turned. Not to mention, I don't think this Wilson would have turned because he's like a buffoon. He's just like a quirky, silly, like haha, oh man, isn't this fun? Like that kind of guy. In the original, he was like an actual character who was always interested in all these conspiracies, and he's always talking
Well,
about like dwindling resources even before it actually becomes a thing in the when like
let's
Conrad lets him know about their entire plan.
well, it's because in the original they treated the characters like adults. It's
Yeah,
just like Mr. Robot. They treat the main characters like they're adults. In the new one, they treat them like they're teens. It's like Netflix. They come across like people that like haven't quite left the house yet, or
yeah.
like
I mean,
16 or 18
it's
or
funny
something
because
like that.
recently there was like the thing that came out that Netflix tells their writers to write dialogue like explicitly saying what they're doing, the characters are doing, so that people on their phones can follow the show. I feel like you could very reasonably follow the show in the new Utopia if you're just on your phone, because so much of the dialogue is just recapping what they just did. Wait, so you're saying that this is happening? Whoa! It's it's like the entire show. The dialogue is that bullshit. It's it's so dumbed down. It is so American. It is an Americanized version of Utopia. Everything about it is American, and it takes away from like, for one, the dry sarcasm and dry wit and just like dark humor from the original. In the new one, they try to do dark humor, but it's all played like so insincerely. In the original, like remember when Lee killed Ian's boss and he just slit his throat and just blood pouring everywhere. He's just walking around and
Yeah, and it's a mess, and he survives for way longer than he should, and
yeah,
like
and
it's
Lee's on
yeah.
the phone, right? And he's like, "Oh, well, I don't think calling it a suicide is gonna work very well. And then he like continues being alive and he tries to escape and he needs to bang on his head to knock him out with a fire hydrant. It's like, yeah, suicide's not gonna work. It's like it's hilarious, but it's like it's like very dark and very funny because of like the way it's treated is like super sincerely like, yeah, this is just happening and it feels like the kind of thing that they would do, that the villains would do. In the new one, it's all like either way too over the top or way too cartoonish, and you never take any of it seriously. Like the fucking fight between Jessica and Dugdale's wife is so funny.
It
She like jumps out of the chair and grabs a gun from the plant and cuts
it's
her restraints somehow. I don't know how.
I swear to God, the Black Widow comparisons, it's like it reminds me of that fight from Hawkeye with like the old Black Widow when they show Yelena getting snapped away. It's all the like choking and like grimacing and like, and, like I hate when people fight like that in movies. They're all like showing teeth and like it doesn't feel like people actually fighting. It doesn't feel like how you would actually fight someone.
Yeah.
You'd be more direct, you would be grunting rather than, like, hissing. It's just
Yeah. And yeah, it's
it looks so silly and strange in MCU.
well, yeah, and it's so weird because the original, there's like barely any like fights, right? Like it's all like very. I think you mentioned it that it's basically like executions in the original. Like instead of seeing like action
Yeah,
scenes, it's just like
bursts of
RB arrives,
violence
kills
rather
them,
than
boom, like shot to the head, and it's done. It's all like staging these big fight, and it's probably arguably because of the low budget in the original. That were restrained into making these scenes not be as like over the top, like actiony. But I think it's to the show's
absolutely.
benefit.
Yeah, I mean, they clearly had more money instead of the new one, but they waste it. They indulge with expensive looking sets and elements that don't add to the characters because the characters aren't really the point of the story.
Yeah, and
Yelling and excitement and playing music while, like, 3 people are interrupting each other in a car, that's what the bread and butter of it is. Everything's fast, everything's, like, loud and
oh,
exciting and
it is
entertaining and
such a
quirky and funny.
loud show. Like, remember the scene where right after RB, not RB, sorry, Wilson is tortured and he's in the car with Jessica and he lost his eye. He's like, "Get in the car! This is Jessica Hyde! Ah! They're trying to harvest is coming after us!" And he's just yelling and yelling. She fucking injects him with heroin to make him pass out. Um, and in the original, it's like, "Oh yeah, they got heroin from a dealer so that to work as a painkiller because they can't really go to a drugstore to buy painkillers." It's like it's also quiet. It is just like Wilson's like reaction to be having his eye pulled out is like he's in shock and he's in pain and he doesn't really know how to react. He's
And,
just like almost
sad,
passing
he
out.
lost an eyeball, and he's
Yeah.
kind of melancholy about
Yeah,
it.
he's like, "How do I look?" He asks um Ian. It's also uh, it's like it is so much louder and it is so much stuff in the new one. Like the original, it looks so good, but it is so cheap, and it looks cheap. I mean, you mentioned it a few times, but it's like charming in that way that it does look cheap.
Yeah, there's a sense of authenticity to
Yeah,
it, like, they just were working with what they had, and
and
it
it just
looks
looks
good
so
in a
beautiful.
way,
I love
but
the way they use lens flare so much and the like
yeah.
extremely oversaturated looks. It's also cool. Like the original has a very unique style, and the new one is just like, oh yeah, generic American like conspiracy thriller.
Well,
Like
all the
the
sharp, colors, something that I remember noting early on was, like, sometimes they'll have color, like, flavor one scene, like, they'll show everything yellow through the light, and then they'll have, like, a bunch of props that are all yellow, and it's like, "Why are all the props yellow?" Because it looks cool,
yeah,
and it's just
exactly.
the
Remember the
same
fucking
thing with
green
any
rooms and everything. It's like, why is the room green? Because it looks cool.
yeah, they're really sharp colors and switching to different colors. There was I'm watching the show right now, or like I have it open. I'm checking out like scenes in it, and One of them is, the purple flower field.
Oh
They
yeah.
just, like, are in a field of purple all of a sudden, and everything is purple in the shot. They do that with the exterior shots. They'll, like, have very vivid colors and snap between opposing ones,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes the show look so much more vivid, whereas the new one, there's nothing like that.
Yeah.
The whole show looks the same, and they don't do anything interesting with color.
Yeah. You mentioned the visuals and everything, and it reminded me because I sent you a screenshot. In the original, there's this really cool shot of Jessica walking away from a car. She's just exploded
Yeah, I
because
just
there.
saw it again. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's a cool shot. I'm gonna put it on screen in the edit. Um, and the thing is, she walks away from that car. She's exploded because she wants to change cars, so it's harder for them to be tracked. In the new one, however, it's so fucking stupid. They keep this one car for the entire show, and the car has like these bloody windshields because in episode 2 or 3, I think 3, like they kill a bunch of the people Harvest sent after them, and there's just like this super bloody car that they've been using for the entire season. So obviously, not covering their tracks really well. And at some point, the police would stop and be like, "Hey, what's with all this blood in your windshield?" Um, and it's just like the one thing is like constantly like, "Oh no, you're not changing cars. You're not changing cars." In the original, they change cars all the time. And you said, and I asked you like, why do you think they kept the car? You said because they wanted the visual of the bloody windshield when they're driving
Yeah, it's
around.
it's purely for the aesthetic quality. It's purely for like, hey, they're in their quirky little. It's like they thought it would be iconic. It would be like they could just drive that like little station wagon throughout the season, and people would be like would recognize it for the station wagon. I'm like, I think it's wishful thinking, man, and it sacrifices the character's intelligence when they drive around in a
Yeah,
car covered in blood. That's literally the line from Pulp Fiction, man. It's just like you can't drive in a car with windows covered in blood. Cops are gonna notice. Someone's gonna notice. It looks bad. You don't want to do it.
exactly. And it's the fucking thing, right? Because in the because you said it's for the visual, and then I was rewatching the original. I'm like, but this shot is so cool. You can still get a cool visual out of changing cars, which is her burning the car so they can't be tracked. And it's a really cool shots. I'm like, it's just so frustrating. Like they're doing things for the sake of visuals because like it's a lack of creativity. You can still get your cool visuals while not sacrificing your character's intelligence. Especially Jessica Hyde, who's supposed to be extremely intelligent, but in the new one, she's so dumb about certain things. Like she doesn't know how to use computers properly. In the new one, in the original, she obviously knows how to use computers because to survive as long as she has on the run, she would have had to know how to use computers. Because it's just like basic knowledge that you need in today's society.
Well,
But
again, this is the thing with a lot of the changes in this show is it's like they seem like those remakes where they just change it to change it,
uh huh,
and they just elements are different, and it's like, why was it like that? It's like, it's a remake. We got to have a little bit like of different in here. It's like
yeah.
the obligatory different, the obligatory changes, and it's like there are things that you did not need to change that you can just do the same way. It's not like you should just completely copy what the original was going for. But that's what I question with all these alterations. Like, why would you do this if it seemingly doesn't make the story any better? It's just, I don't know.
Yeah. And then like in the original, like Jessica knows a lot about what's going on. She doesn't know fully. She doesn't know like her father used to um test stuff on her. Um but in the new one she doesn't know either, but like she knows nothing in the new one. She knows barely anything. It's hilarious how little information she has considering like she's been running from Harvest her entire life. Like what's it she called, Artemis. Yeah, Artemis is like the woman who raised Jessica in the new one after her dad left her. And the original he's called Christos. In the new one they basically merge Artemis with another character from the original that's called the Tramp. And Jessica killing the Tramp in the original is like this really cool scene that shows that she's like, he's a loose end that she's tying up, and it shows how ruthless she is. In the new one, it's like she's gonna choke Artemis, and Artemis fighting for her life, and this huge like, oh my god, it's such a loud scene, and Ian tries to intervene. In the old one, it's just like, Ian, you go steal a car. I've done it a few times. You can, you know, you've seen me do it. Now you can do it as well. Um, while you do that, I'm gonna kill this guy. You know, tying up a loose end. And in the new one, it's just like this super loud scene where she kills Artemis, and Artemis just tells her everything. You're just like, how did you not know this? How did you not know your father was dead and he was killed in a like a fire in the fucking in a an asylum? It's like Artemis hid all that from her. Like there's so little information Jessica has, and it makes her seem so much stupider, because especially because in the new one she's like a character in the comic book, so it's like even clearer what was happening. Like the entire plan is laid out on the comic book, because again, it's another thing you made fun of so many times, was them finding clues in the comic. In the new one, it's just like they're
They
rising
do it
through the
over and over and over again. They will find clues relevant to what's happening in the here and now randomly. They'll just be looking through, they'll find something, they're like, "Look at this. This is a rabbit. See? It's the rabbit is shaped like Uganda. Therefore, it's like, what?" And they just do that all the time, and it's like, just pour water on it to create plot, I guess. It's like, just if only I'd looked at that like manuscript just a little bit harder, you know, looked at it a little differently, seen a country instead of a leaf. It's stupid and uninteresting when
Yeah, and
all
it
the
happens
clues are
so
just
many
in
times. There's so
Utopia.
many times where it's like, oh my god, do you see this? Like they're just randomly looking through the Utopia manuscript, and they find some new huge clue. It's so funny. Like the comic is such a huge part of the new one. In the original, it is an important aspect, but like the big cool thing is that in the original we think the manuscript is like super important, and then when Jessica burns it, is like this huge thing, because she's like, it's the only thing I have left of my father. But she burns it because she suspects that what Milner needs, you know, what Mr. Rabbit needs to create Janus is inside the comic, and she burns it, and Milner's like, "What that? That's just a bunch of drawings done by an old man, an old crazy man. What I need is inside you. Like your father hid Janus inside you." And that's what's so cool. She's spent the entire season trying to get Jessica. In the new one, the comic is like really important, and like there's not never that scene where it's like, oh, the
Well,
comic isn't
and
actually
the
important. It's Jessica that is. Like Milner just says, "Welcome home," and the season ends.
Well, yeah, and the fucking ending of the new one with the I guess Philip Carville,
Yeah.
maybe, or Philip Carville's equivalent, like with long hair,
Yeah,
like
I don't think he's called
drawing
Philip Carville,
manuscripts.
because
Like,
there's a few
what
other
are we doing?
scenes where like they show like books written by Philip Carville, so I think Philip Carville is just like an Easter egg in the new one, and the new character, her dad is,
Yeah,
I don't know
but
what the name is.
that's what they do. It's like Thanos. They're like, look, he like draw up those pages, like he's obsessive and crazy, but everything he writes like comes true. It's like, what are we doing? Philip was just Philip really was just a guy in the original. It wasn't like this.
Yeah, and and she's keeping him, right? Which is also so weird. It's different from the original. The original, he's like in hiding, and he survived everything, and he's being kept like in the basement of this one guy who just happened to have him kept there, and they figure out he's Philip Carville like halfway through season 2. It's like, oh my god, he's alive.
Yeah, you can tell based on the performance of the actress that plays Milner. It's actually one of my favorite moments with her is when she's like, he's alive.
He's
Like
alive. Yeah.
she genuinely thought he was dead, and it's like, oh my
Oh, and
god,
it's
he's
so fun. It's
actually
so
here.
interesting as well, because it's what gives her away to Ian. Is when because she's so taken aback, she's so emotional. She's like, she makes a mistake, and when she's talking to Ian, and that's what causes Ian to figure out that she's not working, she's not helping him. Um, and it's because she has like this huge emotional connection with Philip Carville. And in the new one, it's weird. She's like keeping him prisoner, and he's just like doing drawings, because obviously, like the comics are such a big thing that he's like just doing drawings in his like fucking dungeon that he's being kept in, chained. It is like so cartoonish and so unnecessary to have these changes. I don't get it.
It's ridiculous.
It's also, yeah. And yeah, another big change is one we've talked about a lot in the since we've watched it is with Alice. It's so weird. In the
Oh yeah,
in
I
the original one, right? Arby kills her
ruins
mom
her.
in front of her. And she's like super in shock, and there's like some really great scenes of dialogue of her having panic attacks and everything. It's really, really cool. And when they arrive at the like I don't remember what his position was exactly. He worked for like a specific company. I think he was like the CEO of this like company that manufactures like a bunch of food. Um, and they get to his house and they think he's Mr. Rabbit, but there's no like rabbit carved into his stomach. So it's like, oh, he's not Mr. Rabbit. But they've led Alice to believe like he is Mr. Rabbit and he's the guy that he's in charge of everything that caused everything. So she's like, is this the guy that ruined my life, that killed my mom, that did everything? And then when she gets there, Connor and Lads is at the door. It's funny. And so it's like they give the shotgun they have to Grant, and they're like, if he moves, blow his kneecaps off. And Alice steals the gun while they're figuring out what to do with the guy at the door, which is Conrad Letts. And she just steals the gun and shoots him like cold blooded in the stomach and kills him. And it's just like, oh my god, Alice just killed the man because she thinks he is the one that killed her mom. And like that's it's such a cool moment for her character to see like a kid do that, to see how far she's been pushed as a child, and like how ugly the world is. In the new one,
Yeah,
Alice
you
also
see it so infrequently in stories where like kids kill people
yeah,
because it's like it's not something that you need to see in a lot of different like media, but like that's what they committed to. They're like a kid witnessed her mom getting killed in front of her. And it's like that's her reaction. That's what happens. That's what she's pushed to in the following episode. And it's all done pretty well and all everything follows, but the American one, they may as well not have even tried to translate it because
yeah,
it's not the same thing.
yeah. They kill her mom too in the new one, and Alice is like, I guess yeah, she's affected by it. It's like we get so little of it. Like in the original, like there's a lot of time spent on showing how emotionally like devastated she is and how like she's really in shock. She's barely like functional. She's just like focusing on writing an essay for school because it's the one thing she can think of. It's like it's really bleak and it's really interesting because like the actress does a great job. I really like her. And nothing against the new Alice actress too. I don't really think it's like her fault either. But in the new one, she's like her mom dies and like there's barely a reaction, and the person she kills isn't like who she thinks is Mr. Rabbit. It's just Dugdale's wife, and it's basically self defense because she's attacking Jessica once they get to Dugdale's house, and like and so you you lose that. Like it's not cold blooded. She doesn't think he's the guy that killed her mom. So like it's so like you just lose that. It's so much less interesting. And I don't know why. I don't know why they did it that way. Why they just changed it so to be less interesting. And like in a show that's longer than the original, you know? Like you're just losing so much character from Alice. I don't get it. Again, it's another change where it's just like, why did you do this? While spending more time on stupid shit like Charlotte. Like half the season spent on Charlotte, but we don't get the important moments that we need from characters like Alice, who's actually a big important character in the show.
Yeah, makes for a less interesting Alice and just yeah, self-defense straight up. It's
Yeah.
boring and like just whatever.
And again, she barely
I just,
reacts to killing him. There's
yeah,
like one scene where she talks to Ian, and admittedly, it's a pretty good scene. We talked about that, like Ian talking to her and like putting on music and everything. Like that was a cool scene. But yeah, so much less interesting. It's well, Grant is so much less interesting in the new one. For one, because we don't see anything about his family, right? In the original, like when we're introduced to him, we see his mom asleep on the couch, and she has like all these bruises, and it just shows like, yeah, she's an abuse victim from her husband. And it's like, okay, that's cool. And he's like, there's a very shitty situation for him at home, and he's like this really fucked up kid. And then you want is like a regular kid, right? Like we don't know much about Grant. There's so much less character. Like we don't know about his home environment if he has a bad, you know, relationship with his family. It's just like, you know, Grant's there. We just lose so much. Like, and it's lost, and we don't get anything like instead of it. Even though the show is so long, is like 2 episodes longer. I don't get it where the time is going. Like, how can Grant be such a less developed character, a less interesting character, while the show is longer and we're not spending time on anything actually meaningful? It's just so weird to me. I don't get how like the time efficiency works in the new one compared to the old one.
Yeah. Time, just who cares? You know, we got to get to 8 episodes. We got to have this be an actual Amazon Prime show.
Yeah, yeah, and it's it's frustrating as well because I like the actor that plays Grant in the new one. I mean, we talked
Yeah,
about it. He's in Euphoria. Um,
I can't say he gave all that great of a performance though. It's just, but
I don't even know if it's his fault. That's the thing, right?
well, that's the thing with most of the acting. I genuinely don't know. I don't know if the problem is the acting or the directing. I think it's probably the direction. It's
Yeah,
probably just not a good
and just
director
like the
giving them
script,
the
it doesn't
actors,
really give
or
them too much.
yeah, like both of them do not understand the source material and the characters that this is based on, and it just results in them feeling flanderized. They don't feel like the original's characters at all.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I mentioned Wilson in passing, but like Wilson is like again so much less interesting. Like as you said, he doesn't feel like an adult. He feels like a teenager. Um, But the old one is like a conspiracy nut, but he's like a smart adult. Everything he does like makes sense. In the new one, he seems like a child who's obsessed with a comic book, and like even the dialogue he has with like I think it's like his sister in episode one. It's just like, oh okay, doubter. Like you don't believe all the conspiracies from Utopia. It's just like so childish. It's like so not like Wilson. And like Becky as well. Another change they do, they made her. I think anyway, because like every indication from the new one shows that she actually has deals in the new one. The disease that she got from her dad, um, that was manufactured and why she by Harvest, and why she got invested in like learning about the conspiracy with Utopia or dystopia in the new one, because in the original she thinks she's going to have deals, which is this disease her dad had, that's genetic, but she actually doesn't, and her only symptoms come from withdrawal from her having from her taking drugs to prevent deals, and we find that out in the end of season two, in the season two finale. Um, and that's really interesting because she's like always thinking she's like a ticking time bomb, but it just shows like she's scared of this disease, but it doesn't actually happen. But in the new one, it seems like she actually has it because remember she has even like a basically like the virus leaves like a mark on her neck. Like Ian even says like I never thought a virus could look pretty, but it's such a corny line, but it's weird. Like it seems like she actually does have it in the new one. Like we see her having like full on like fits like 3 times in the new one. It's weird. It's so weird. Like this, the small changes. Like why did you do that? Why is this different? I don't really know why. In fairness, we didn't see like season two, so this could have gone somewhere different that was still interesting. I doubt it, but it should have. It could have. But it's just I don't get it. I don't get why to change these things. As well as you mentioned it as well, and I'm curious to hear what you have to say about him. But Ian is like one of your favorite characters from the
Uh,
original, and he's like he's so bad in the new one. I don't even I don't even know how to describe his differences. He in the original he's just like
he is
really,
not the same person. He's so boring.
yeah,
He's one of the worst just in terms of like not even doing anything that made him interesting in the
Yeah.
original movie. He's almost like a thrill seeker because he in his original life he was such a rule follower and a drawn between the lines guy, and it, that that stops being a thing when he gets like the thrill of the conspiracy and starts looking more into it. That's what makes him interesting in
Yeah.
season 2 as well.
Yeah, but
He's a bit
remember
more
when he's like going
spontaneous
to
in season
staple
2.
his own tongue? He's like, "You think you can die of boredom? Because I was just about to staple my own tongue." Hilarious fucking scene. And his boss is like, "Self harm is a serious side." It's just like, fuck. No, I'm not self harming. Because like the story they made up is that he tried to kill himself as well, so not to like reveal the conspiracy to his boss. Is like just the entire thing is funny. Um, that they deal with him. But yeah, he's like a thrill seeker. And there's like a scene I you mentioned it when we were watching in the new one, right after he like I think he breaks into like a network building or something, and you just he's running away from like the police or something, and you just see him like he hides around a corner. He's just laughing, and I remember you saying, "Oh hell yeah, man!" Like he's having fun despite like risking his life because it's just like the thrill of it is what really interests him. Which is really interesting about his character. He's always seeking a thrill once he finds out like about this conspiracy, even though like it's putting his life at risk. In the new one, he's like, well, I don't even know what he wants in the new one, other than like him being like really into Becky, and
Becky,
therefore he's
best,
yeah,
yeah.
he does everything because of Becky, but it's like so much less interesting.
Yeah, and their chemistry is just not there. They don't have, like, contrasting character
Yeah.
elements that make, like, their relationship interesting.
And he's already in love with
It's
her before the show starts as well, which is another weird change. Is that they're
Yeah.
all friends before the show. In the original, they're not that. They just like they happen to all be online on the forum at the same time. Some of them like talk to each other a few times, like Grant, Wilson, and Becky, but like they weren't.
Well, that's what's interesting. Their fling almost happens as the story progresses. It's
Yeah.
them being, like, on the run that kind of, like, gets romance triggered
Well, yeah,
rather than something they had when they
they have
first met
sex
up.
in
When they first met up, it's just like, yeah, or, just kind of
yeah, they have sex in episode 1 just because it's like they see each other, they're attracted to each other, they just want to have sex. They're drunk, right?
uh,
It's just like, yeah. And then because they keep being involved together because the conspiracy happens, that's when like they start developing feelings for each other. It becomes something more than just having sex. Um I mean, Becky even says, well, there's drunk shagging and angry shagging. But in the new one, they're like he's already pining for her before the show starts. And I mean, it's even a thing that Sam says to him, which we'll get to Sam as well because she's a new character. Um, yeah, and she even says like, "Oh, you're gonna have a chance to meet Jessica, not Jessica, Becky. Finally, the girl you've been pining for ages." So it's just like it's such a weird change. It's like his entire character revolves around Becky in the new one. It doesn't seem like he has a character. Um, which is just so boring. Um, but yeah, it just
And something as well that I remember talking about was the clothes. That was so annoying, and I knew they'd do exactly what they did. Everyone just wears the same clothes after they swap the first time, and they have them wear, like, these shorts and really awkward looking outfits. There's, like, one time where they switch to awkward clothes instead of the original, and it's kind of funny, but I knew they'd make it a full season thing. Again, with the MCU thing, with the stupid fucking car, and they're, like, they give them these really unnatural looking clothes and costumes for them to wear, and it's, like, embarrassing. Makes they don't feel like adults because 'cause they're not dressed like adults. They don't
yeah.
look and present like
Well, yeah. The only funny thing in
people.
the original when they change clothes is because Jessica gives Becky uh, a queen's like uh jumper, right? It has like the long live the queen or something like that.
Yeah, and
And
it's,
it's
like,
like
pink or
and
something,
it's pink.
so
Yeah, it's because also she's Welsh, so she would like be super fond of the queen, and that's why it's kind of funny. Like, yeah, the queen and pink, and Jessica even says you look shit, but in a good way. And like that's the only thing we get, and like they're obviously like constantly like changing clothes, changing how they look, just like normally. They just didn't want to keep wearing the exact same clothes they had when they went on the run. But in the new one, it's just like these very like over the top, like disguise outfits, and like even like they even I don't know if I assume they're wearing wigs, right? But they wouldn't have like cut their hair. But like Becky especially, and Sam, like they get different haircuts and different hair colors, and it's just like why are you making them look so different? And yeah, it's so weird. And like I just remember the other disguise they have is obviously from Grant in the original, right? Because he's being manhunted because of the school shooting that they framed him for. Um,
Yeah, his is 100% necessary. They fully
yeah,
all needed to blend in, and that's why he looks so different. So
yeah, they make him. He makes a few comments about looking goth, how he hates it and everything. It's kind of funny, the poor kid. But in the new one, did they even like hide his how he looks? I don't think they
I
do,
don't,
right? Because they also
not in
framed
a
him
way that
for the
mattered.
shooting, um, but it was for for shooting like up that house. But I
The
don't think they
cops
did.
noticing them at the end and chasing them around them, the way they're like running around is so funny. It doesn't add up.
Yeah, it's odd, but yeah. Again, it's just like it just makes it so feel so American, so Marvel. It's so boring, so bland. I hate. And yeah. I guess the other thing we need to talk about is Sam. Sam is a new character in this show. She was not in the original. And you think, okay, you're adding a new character. I wonder why. And it's funny because she seems
Great
like,
actress, that
yeah,
interesting
the Happy Death
material,
Day
kind of.
actress. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I like her. And it's funny. She's the best character of the group, despite her being a new one and not being adapted. And we talked about it. It's like basically because she's like always like she's an active part in the story, and she's like always like knowing what's going on and trying to like get things done. She's always like, "Oh, we're pursuing the comic and everything." Like she seems like a character instead of a cartoon. And unfortunately, she dies in episode 2 or 3, the end of one
yeah. I
of
think
these
it's
episodes.
two. Yeah,
Yeah, and she's killed by Jessica. You're like, okay, why would Jessica kill her? It's because she thinks like there can only be one leader of their group, and so she kills uh Sam because she's like, oh yeah, she was, you know, challenging my authority. And you're like, what? And especially like in the scene where she thinks she's challenging her authority, she's just talking down Ian because Ian is like, oh no, I want to leave. Like, let me leave. I don't want to like be part of this. I just want to like go to the police and see if they can help us. Like, it makes absolutely no sense for her to kill her. And it just makes you think, oh, the only reason why you have this new character is for Jessica to kill her, to show how ruthless she is. But you still had the same in the original when she killed the tramp, and you didn't need to sacrifice any of the characters that Jessica's trying to help. Which is another thing that they changed in the new one, where Jessica isn't actually trying to help them. In the original, she gets to them, it's like, come with me if you want to live, and she helps them, and she's like, do you have the manuscript? Or like, even though they know, she knows that they don't, when they tell her, she's still trying to help them and teaching them how to survive. In the new one, she gets them because the address, she thinks that they're with Grant, and she knows Grant has the Utopia manuscript. If she wants that, she's using them for her means. And so like everyone's scared of her. She just killed one of their friends. And they spend the entire season that way, like full of animosity. It's just like a really weird change. She never has that connection with Ian that she has in the original, which becomes even a big thing in season 2. Like there's none of that. Like there's no reason for the characters to like her, especially Grant, because Grant in the original he had like a very like interesting episode where he goes with her to grab the manuscript from Alice's house, and she basically like is being a mother to him. It's like a really interesting episode to show how Jessica cares for Grant, and she's like being this motherly figure, which is something that she never had because she's always been on the run ever since she grew up. Even the way like she mentions Christos is like he was more than a guard than a dad. which is also interesting for her character, but none of that is in the new one. And everyone has like this full animosity towards her until like the finale, where they're like, "No, yeah, we're a fun, happy group. Like we're sticking together." It's like, why are you sticking up for Jessica? She's like killed your friend and done nothing to help you the entire season. She's been like just always threatening to kill you the entire season. Why do you care about her? It is so weird.
Such a stupid thing to add to their to make it so that basically they're supposed to be afraid of her in the American version. It doesn't add up, and it poisons the relationship. It poisons her role in the story and what she means to the other characters.
Yeah, and she becomes such a less interesting character when she's like, it's like she's always looking out for herself in the old one, but she also is a good person. She tries to help these people. She's just like, if you get in my way, I'll cut you loose, but I'll still try to help you. In the new one, it's just like, no, I literally will put a gun to your head if you don't do what I say because I need you to get to Grant. Like, remember, there's even the fucking scene where she wrestles with Grant for the manuscript. It's also like such a stupid scene that goes on for way too long, of her running after Grant, who like runs out of a window, and they drop the manuscript on the grass outside of the house and everything. I remember as well. I just remember this. I keep remembering things. Like, remember when they burned down the house when they left? Why did they do
Yeah,
that?
to look cool, I
There's
guess.
no reason. Like, they're leaving the house. Like, there's nothing there that'll trace you. That'll trace back to you to where you're going. Like, just leave the house. Why are you burning it? But they don't burn and change cars. But they did that with a house. It makes no sense. It's so weird. And then they leave the Sam's body outside because they don't want to burn it. Uh, it's all so strange. It's like these little changes, and you're just like, why are you doing this? And it just makes the show that little bit stupider every time. It's like that for the entire show. It's so frustrating. And it frustrates me especially because it's like, why didn't you just like save the original? Because like there's been talks, right,
Yeah,
of getting
but
this remake done since 2015. The show was canceled in 2014. You could have just saved the original. Like HBO tried to
it
do
was
it.
relatively close. Yeah, we're talking like 6 years, give or take. This happened quickly, and it's insane that they wouldn't have tried to bridge the gap, just bring the original Utopia back, but
Yeah, they
instead
preferred to
remake it.
remake it. Yeah, and it's funny because originally David Fincher was attached to work on it with uh Gillian Flynn, and Rooney Mara was
Could have been Kino.
yeah, I mean Rooney Mara playing Jessica would have been fun. Um we did end up not getting that because there was a dispute between HBO and David Fincher over the budget because he was asking for a way too big a budget, which, I love David Fincher's movies, but I don't it's weird that he needs such a big budget to remake a show that was so cheap. Like,
Well, he needed the same with Mindhunter. That's why that never kept going.
well,
So
yeah, but like Mindhunter I get because it's like, you know, it's his show, but he's adapting something that is so cheap. Why do you need to like remake it and make it so expensive? Like, can you not achieve the same thing with like a similar budget, or make me like a bigger budget but not like to the same level of the original? Um it's just so weird. I don't get why he needed such a big budget. But yeah, because of that he dropped out of the project, and then when the rights expired from HBO, Amazon picked it up and still kept on Gillian Flynn as the writer. And yeah, it's another thing that's weird because you've read a few of her books, right, Gillian Flynn?
oh yeah, I've read them all, the 3 main ones anyway.
Yeah, and you seem to like them. I mean, when you
Yeah,
mentioned that
they're
Gillian Flynn remade it, I was like, oh yeah, I like Gillian Flynn.
well, this is what's hilarious. I'd call her like a really efficient writer because you got to remember she wrote the screenplay actually for the movie.
For
It's
a
based
girl.
directly on her book,
Yeah.
but she adapted it for film. She worked with Steve McQueen for Widows. She's had history working with films before rather than just writing books. But the new Utopia, it doesn't feel like her at all. I guess someone that's like read and seen most of the projects she's worked on beforehand, like it feels completely alien to her. I don't know why she took on this project, and I don't know why it feels the way it does, because the themes are not the type of themes that she usually tackles, and
Uh-huh.
they're not handled with a level of nuance that she usually delivers. It's instead loud and just safe and sanitary.
Yeah. It is weird to think like this show would be safe because it is such. The original is like so bold, and I mean there was like a lot of backlash from the original, especially because of the school shooting scene from episode 3. Um, because that scene really is rough. I remember when we watched it, you're like, okay, they actually did that. It's rare that you see something like that, like actual school shooting depicted. Um, RB killing a bunch of kids in the school. Um, but the new one is just like so bland. You don't, because like there's like these big debates, and remember like the scene where they debate whether they want to kill the kids, and like the woman is just like, no, we shouldn't. Like we need to draw a line. In the new one, there in the original there isn't like a debate. They're all just like, yeah, we need to do this. Like we need to do this to achieve our goal. So they don't even think twice about killing kids, and that's what's so cool. I remember Jessica, like Becky's, like, how could they do this? uh, how could they? And Jessica's like, they, it's just a bunch of kids. Like, it's just some lives. So what? It doesn't matter to them. Like, and that's what's like really cool. Like the ruthlessness that we see from a show that was willing to go there. Um, in the new one, it's just like they do have the scene where Arby kills the kids, but it is so much less impactful and done so much stupider as well that it just feels like a sanitized version of it. It's just like, I don't know. Like like, even the debates are like, oh yeah, should we do this? Should we not do this? And everything. Like it doesn't seem like the kind of thing that would happen in the original, because in the original, like they knew their goals. The ends justify their means, so they would have been like, they never questioned whether they should do the school shooting. They just did it. So I don't know. It's weird. Like a lot of it is just that kind of thing where it's just like, why is the show so toned
So much
down?
longer, more
Yeah.
bloated, and more complicated, but
Yeah.
also weaker and,
Yeah.
like, with less of a punch.
Yeah, it's weird. Like it is really weird. I don't get it. It just feels so cartoonish. Like they make the entire thing with like all the kids being bred for the cult to like sacrifice themselves, or you know to be used for the cause, to become assassins and everything. Like the kids, the place they call like home, that they do this, like this cult thing. It's like, why are you doing this so much? Like, and they make like RB come from home, and there's all this entire thing, and everyone like believing in this cult, and the thing about like, what have you done to earn your place in this crowded world, and purpose. They make purpose like a big theme for the new one. Like it just makes it seem so much less realistic. And I know, like, a conspiracy show like this doesn't necessarily need to be super realistic, but if you watch the original, you kind of think like this is the kind of thing that could feasibly happen, right? Like, nothing stretches like your believability all that much. The new one is like everything is just so cartoonish. You're like, this is not the original. It's just like so far away from the original, and the idea that like this conspiracy could happen. It's just like, no, this is so far fetched because it is so cartoonish. It would never happen. So it just makes it like inherently less interesting. I don't know.
Yeah. Is
Yeah,
that most of the, character? Like, I'm trying to think if we've gone through pretty much everything. It's
yeah. I mean, I talked to not too much about Wilson, which is a little sad, but
Oh,
it's mostly
well,
because Wilson in the new one is so boring. But we can talk about him.
it's like he's not even the same person. Yeah, Wilson is so much it he we keep mentioning the loud thing, but he is
He's the
one of the
loudest.
loudest
That's the
characters in the
worst.
new one.
Yeah, he's
It's
so
so awful
loud.
because he's so somber in the original. When
Yeah,
you after he loses his eye, he's just, like, sad,
yeah,
straight up. He's in pain, he's, like, trying he's legit and he's mostly sitting on the side, and that's actually what's interesting about his turn. You're like, he feel like he's in a position to get convinced after something that like that insane happened to him,
Well,
but
yeah, I mean, they tortured him and killed his dad, and he's just like actually convinced by it, which is so interesting. Um, I mean, the same beats happen in the new one, but it doesn't hit the same.
no. Which is ironic actually because it takes longer for the eye to happen again with the moving everything forward, everything you have to wait so much longer in the new one, but
Yeah, I mean, the torture
yeah,
scene happens in episode 2.
Wilson is a quiet, more reserved and somber character in the original series, and in the new one, he is loud, shouting everything. His turn makes no sense, and it's they do the wrong things. Like they keep swapping out his eye patch and giving him new eye patches. It's like don't stylize his eye patch. Stop trying to
Oh
make
yeah,
everything
remember when he
iconic.
he did like a glitter W on like a pink eye
Uh,
patch at the end of the season? It's like, oh my god.
Yeah, like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing like, look at the cool different eye patches Wilson carries. It's like someone carved out his eye with a spoon, dude. And he wouldn't be like glamorizing his eye
Yeah.
patches. At least
But
not
that's
that
the
early on,
thing,
God
man.
forbid.
Like the show's so insincere. It seems like Marvel humor. It's like, ah, see,
Yeah.
he's making fun of his own like lack of eye. Isn't that fun? Like it is so Marvel. That makes it so boring. Because the
Exactly.
original wasn't that. The original took itself seriously to a certain extent. And when it didn't, it was like never poking fun at like just itself. It was poking fun of like not poking fun inherently, just like having fun with the concepts they were
Well,
exploring.
being dark comedy.
Yeah,
That's what Utopia always was. It was a dark comedy, like crazy, violent things happen, but there's this funniness to how lost you are in season one. And the characters are funny too. They make light, quote unquote, of the situation. It's dangerous, but there's a funniness to how in the black they are and how they're just kind of having to roll with it,
yeah,
even though it's all of it's so insane and complicated.
yeah, yeah. I think that's most of it now, though. You mentioned Jessica, Ian, Becky,
Yeah,
Wilson,
Grant,
Grant,
Wilson,
Alice,
yeah.
Dugdale, and his wife. I don't know.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't think we've mentioned enough about how bad Dugdale is, though. Like
Well,
because his role is so different. He's not the same character at all. It's so frustrating.
yeah, it's completely different. You gotta see it for yourself for one to appreciate just how much of the new show focuses on that, like, the trial, the vaccine, the quote unquote "cure," even though that's not what the FDA is gonna be talking about. But, um, it's so much worse in the new one, so much worse and focused on to an unnecessary degree.
Yeah. And Michael is just made to be like such a buffoon, but like has no idea what's going on, and he's like a nobody that they just use because he happened to find out about this vaccine years before. Like it's all so stupid. like but that's the thing as well. Like the entire plan from Christie and uh Milner, Mr. Rabbit, it's also it seems like they come up with it on the spot, and sometimes they do. Like, oh, a situation has come up, we need to deal with it, and like we need to deal with Michael before he fucks up our plan. Like they say that a few times, especially with to Christie's son, who's always trying to deal with stuff. It's all like it's they seem like much less of a threat because they're always uh like figuring out what to do on the spot, and their plan isn't like working the way they intended. In the original they had like all these contingencies, and everything like actually did go the way they wanted. Like especially like just the contingencies they had so many of them. But especially with Dugdale. But everything like ends up going according to their plan. Not literally everything, but like most things, because their plan is like fairly simple but really effective. And the new one is just so convoluted. It's always making up on the spot and having to deal with situations that they themselves made because the plan from the get go was stupid, especially with Charlotte and all the, the killing the fucking the twin and everything.
So long story short, the original Utopia is really good. The new one,
No.
you're going to be lost if you haven't seen the shows. And seriously, I would hope you've taken our advice and watched the original before the remake. But
Yeah.
it, it's the new one is so bad. It's kind of gotten forgotten. It was canceled. But I don't know how Gillian Flynn made that series, but she missed the mark, and it is nothing like the original Utopia. The original Utopia is really interesting and good.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I think that's it. It's almost 2 hours long today. Yeah. Oh, I had a lot to say about these shows. I mean, it was mostly me
Oh.
talking. I know you're sick.
Yeah, I've kind of been suppressing the cough through and through, but yeah, like man, this one bothered you. I can tell.
Yeah, I've been wanting to talk about this show for so long. I planned to make a video on it, but then there was the Pyrocynical video on Utopia that was like 8 hours long. On both Utopias, I was like, well,
Is
yeah.
that any good?
I haven't watched it because I was still planning on making my video, so I was like, I don't want to steal any arguments from him. Um, but yeah,
Ooh.
I assume it's pretty good. I mean, an 8 hour long video about comparing both Utopias, calling the old one good and the new one bad. I mean, it seems like it'll be Kino. Um, but yeah, I've had lots of thoughts about these shows for such a long time. And I really love the old one. It's so frustrating that they remade the show instead of just continuing the old one. They could have just easily saved it, but whatever. I mean, the show was such a low budget. It surely wouldn't have cost much to save it, but whatever. But yeah. This is the first episode we're recording in 2025. We're recording it on New Year's Day, 1st of January 2025.
Yeah.
Fun time. So happy New Year. I mean, and we've already released a video, an episode of this podcast this New Year,
Yeah.
but for us, it's also
Start of
New
the
Year.
year. Yeah.
Yeah,
So this is the start of the year episode. 2 hour
and
special.
yeah, and what is going to be, Evan, the first recommendation of 2025?
I'm going with a movie I have not seen yet, and the
Interesting.
reason is the poster is one of the coolest, hardest posters in like film history. Milos Forman's Amadeus. That I know Mozart, and that's pretty much it. I've heard it's really good though.
Huh. Okay. The 1984 movie.
Was that the year
Yeah,
it came out?
yeah, it seems like it.
Ye
Yeah, the
Yep,
poster
that's the
goes
one.
hard. I mean, fucking hell.
I think it's based on a play, and the like top of it, like with the humanoid figure is like from that, but one way or another, like that poster is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it was already on my watch list. Apparently, it has a good rating, 80.4 on IMDb is very good. So, all right,
Yeah.
intriguing.
I know precious little. I've been curious to check it out, and it's one a lot of people cite as being pretty visually spectacular.
Fun times. Okay. All right. So for next time, we're gonna be talking about Emma. Oh my God, almost 3 hours. 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Yeah, I did notice that. I'm like, I'm still gonna go with it, but yeah.
Oh, could you, Evan? It's fine though. Um. All right. Well, yeah. So that was our discussion about Utopia. We recommend the old one. We don't recommend the new one. Though it is interesting if you've watched the old one to compare the two. It's an interesting experience. And we'll catch you next time with Amadeus. So, yeah.
Catch you next time, everybody. Thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Bye bye.